Most people believe rock bottom announces itself. They imagine a dramatic moment, a single event, a final collapse that leaves no doubt life has changed forever. But real life is rarely that loud. Sometimes, rock bottom arrives quietly. It looks like another unpaid bill, another rejected opportunity, another night wondering how tomorrow will be different from today. And sometimes, it arrives with someone else depending entirely on you. A child, watching, trusting, believing that somehow their father will find a way. Chris Gardner never planned to become a symbol of perseverance. He wasn't chasing greatness. He wasn't trying to inspire the world. He was simply trying to keep one promise: to never stop showing up for his son. He would lose almost everything else before he ever considered losing that. And in the years that followed, life would ask him the same question it eventually asks all of us. Who will you become when everything that once defined you begins to disappear? For Chris Gardner, the answer would not begin in a boardroom. It would not begin with success. It would begin with loss. Long before the empty bank account, before the shelters, before the subway station bathrooms, there was a boy trying to understand a different kind of poverty. The poverty of growing up without safety. His father was absent. The men who entered his family's life often brought fear instead of protection. Violence became something the young Chris witnessed far too early. Home, the place that should have taught security, often taught survival instead. Yet even in those difficult years, one idea quietly took root inside him. If he ever became a father, his child would never have to wonder whether he was loved. It was a promise made long before anyone was listening, long before anyone would know his name. Years passed. Chris worked. He searched. Like millions of ordinary people, he simply wanted a chance to build an honest life. When opportunity finally appeared, came disguised as possibility. A business selling expensive medical scanners. It looked like the breakthrough he had been waiting for. He invested everything: his savings, his confidence, his future. But life has a way of testing the dreams we are most certain about. The machines were difficult to sell. Bills continued arriving, whether the machines sold or not. Debt quietly grew. Opportunity slowly became pressure. And pressure was becoming something far heavier than money alone. Because by then, Chris Gardner was no longer responsible only for himself. He had become a father, and every difficult decision now carried 2 lives instead of 1. The collapse did not happen overnight. It happened one unpaid bill at a time, one closed door, one promise to himself that tomorrow would somehow be different. The business struggled. The bills kept arriving. Debt quietly grew, until one day, tomorrow looked exactly like yesterday. The strain reached beyond finances. His relationship fell apart. The home he had tried to build began to disappear beneath his feet. And then, life reduced itself to one question. Not, how do I become successful? But, where will my son sleep tonight? It is difficult to describe the weight of a father carrying that question. There are no speeches, no applause, only quiet calculations. How much money is left? Where can we go? How long before someone asks us to leave again? Chris Gardner and his young son began moving from place to place. Friends, cheap motels, church shelters, anywhere that offered one more night. But even those doors eventually closed. There came a night when there was nowhere left to go. No home, No bed, no certainty, only a father and a little boy trying to make it through until morning. So Chris did something no parent ever imagines they will have to do. He locked the door of a public restroom, held his son close, and waited for the night to pass. Outside, people walked by without knowing. Inside, a father quietly fought the feeling that life had defeated him. He did not cry out. He did not surrender. He simply stayed beside the little boy who was too young to understand why they had nowhere to go, and just old enough to believe that wherever his father was, he was safe. Sometimes, courage does not look like standing before a crowd. Sometimes, it looks like staying awake in the darkness, so someone else can sleep without fear. Morning came, just as it always does, quietly, without asking whether the people waiting for it were ready. Chris Gardner stepped back into the world carrying the same burdens he had carried the night before. The bills had not disappeared. The debt had not been erased. He was still homeless, still searching, still responsible for a little boy who depended on him for everything. But there was one thing that had not changed: his decision. He would not quit. Some people imagine courage as one great act, one extraordinary moment that changes everything. Real courage is usually much smaller. It is getting up when yesterday gave you every reason to stay down. Not long before his life began to unravel, Chris had noticed something that refused to leave his mind. A man stepped out of a bright red Ferrari. He was well-dressed, confident, peace. Chris walked over and asked two simple questions. "What do you do? And how do you do it?" The man was a stockbroker. That brief conversation planted a seed. Now, standing in the middle of one of the darkest seasons of his life, Chris chose to believe that the seed was still alive. He applied for an internship at a respected brokerage firm. There was one problem. The internship paid nothing. No salary, no guarantees, no promise of a job at the end. Just a chance. Most people would have called it impossible. How could a homeless father support a child while working for free? But sometimes, life places before us a door that makes no practical sense. And all we can decide is whether fear or hope will walk through it first. Chris chose hope. Every morning, he dressed as professionally as he could. Every evening, he returned to the uncertainty he had never truly left behind. His colleagues saw an intern determined to succeed. Very few knew that after work, he was still searching for somewhere safe for his son to sleep. Some battles are fought in public. Others are won in silence. Internship became a test unlike anything Chris Gardner had faced before. There were no second prizes. At the end of the program, only one intern would be offered a permanent position. Everyone else would walk away empty-handed. Every phone call mattered. Every client mattered. Every minute mattered. Chris knew he could not afford to waste time, so he worked with an urgency that few people around him understood. He skipped unnecessary breaks. He learned faster. He stayed focused, not because he wanted to outshine everyone else, but because failure carried a price far greater than disappointment. Failure meant returning to the same uncertainty he had fought so hard to escape. Still, he never asked for pity. He never stood before his colleagues and explained what happened after office hours. He let his work speak where his circumstances remained silent. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. And with every passing day, the distance between survival and hope grew just a little shorter. Then, the day finally arrived. the interns gathered together. One by one, their futures were about to be decided. Chris sat quietly, not knowing whether everything he had endured had been enough. Then, his name was called. He had earned the position, not through luck, not through sympathy, but through relentless perseverance. For the first time in what must have felt like forever, the future did not look like another locked door. It looked like possibility, but perhaps the greatest victory was not the job itself. It was the promise that had survived every hardship. The little boy who had slept wherever his father could find shelter would finally have a home again. Sometimes, the greatest success is not changing your own life. It is changing the life of someone who trusted you before you had anything to offer but your presence. Success has a strange way of changing how the world remembers a person. People see the finished building. Few remember the nights when there were only scattered bricks. In time, Chris Gardner built a successful career. He founded his own investment firm. He became a respected businessman. His story reached audiences around the world. Eventually, Hollywood told a version of his journey. Millions watched. Millions were inspired. But if you asked Chris Gardner to point to the greatest achievement of his life, it would not be a company. It would not be wealth. It would not even be a film bearing his name. It would be something far quieter. Promise kept. Years earlier, a little boy had followed his father through uncertainty, through shelters, through nights that no child should have to remember. That little boy grew up knowing something money could never buy. His father stayed. When life became unbearable, he stayed. When hope became difficult, he stayed. When walking away might have seemed easier, he stayed. Sometimes, the greatest inheritance a parent leaves behind is not comfort. It is an example that says, no matter how dark life becomes, we do not stop showing up for the people we love. Chris Gardner's story was never really about escaping poverty. It was about refusing to let hardship decide the kind of father he would become. And perhaps that is why his story continues to resonate. Not because millions will ever become stockbrokers, but because millions know what it feels like to keep going for someone else. There is a moment in every human life when the future becomes impossible to see, not because hope has disappeared, but because pain has become louder than hope's voice. Chris Gardner knew that moment. He lived it. He never discovered a life without pain. He discovered something far more valuable, that pain does not have to become permission to surrender. The nights in uncertainty ended. The empty pockets eventually filled. The little boy who once slept wherever his father could find shelter grew up knowing what perseverance looks like. Not because his father talked about courage, because he watched it. And perhaps that is the quiet power of every life that refuses to give up. We never know whose future is being shaped, simply because we chose to keep walking. One day, life will ask each of us a question, not about success, not about comfort, but about character. Who will I become now? Chris Gardner answered that question, one ordinary day at a time. The question now belongs to us. Your answer will not be spoken. It will be lived. This is the power of pain, where broken story becomes unbreakable strength. Thank you for watching.